Hi everyone. As you know, my name's Jo McCormack, and this is the task description for the project report that you have due this semester. So I just want to quickly go over again the dates that they're due so that everyone is very clear. So Part A must be submitted electronically via Learning at Griffith. Now it's due on the 25th of March at 4 p.m. That is the one where you can work in pairs and submit the same assignment. Part B, which is worth 45%, again you must submit electronically via Learning at Griffith, and that is due on the 26th of April at 5 p.m. They are all individual assignments. So for that particular section, you're more than welcome to work in groups of 2 or 3 students to analyse the menu and insert all of that data into FoodWorks. However, the actual report itself, all the writing, all the clinical reasoning and so on, must be your own work. So some of the appendices can be the same, but the actual project report must be your own original and unique work. And then Part C, it's due at the same time as Part B, so on the 26th of April at 5 p.m. And Part C is your own assessment of your own project report against the marking criteria, and just making sure for Part C there, I need you to give yourself a mark out of 45. So you will circle each component of the project report and what you think you got in each area, each section, and then at the end do a total and give yourself an actual mark. So for the purpose of this assignment, the learning outcomes that we're assessing are on the screen there. So the first one is review and develop a menu plan which provides safe, nutritious and culturally appropriate foods and a large-scale food service. So this food service isn't large in terms of hundreds of beds. The food service that we're analysing is actually only a 20-bed food service, but it still gives you a very good idea of the different considerations that we have to make. Modify recipes and menus to develop therapeutic diets suitable in a range of food service systems. So you are expected in this assignment to be able to produce a menu which meets the criteria for a number of different therapeutic diets, all integrated into the one menu. So you need to be providing a menu that suits people who have diabetes and hypertension, as well as just normal dietary requirements. And the third one there is evaluate the planning, operation, management and quality improvement cycles required to deliver an efficient and effective food service system across a range of settings. So for that component there, you'll see as part of your project report, you need to make recommendations around the actual food service system and how you can possibly make improvements to make it sort of work, I suppose, a little bit better and more efficiently and cost effectively. So it is an actual system, it is an actual hospital, and this is the menu from the actual hospital, and everything that you write will be going to the dietitian who's in control out there. So make sure that your recommendations are realistic, they're not overly expensive, there might be small changes that you could make to just improve the system, generally speaking. So why am I getting you to do a menu review? Probably a very good question. Some of you will end up doing a menu review when you're out on placement in fourth. And to give you an idea, this was going to be a project for the fourth year students doing placement. And when I suggested that maybe rather than giving it to the fourth years, we can give it to the third years, get you to do it as a practice in class. And so then that would prepare you better for fourth year. The dietitian out at Chinchilla jumped on that chance, created a different food service project for the fourth year students, and you are now doing what was going to be a fourth year menu review. But the other reason why I get you to do this is that many of you are going to end up working in private practice, and doing menu reviews of places like residential aged care facilities and so on is part of the work that you will do as a private practice dietitian. So you need to, at some stage over the next few years, work out how much you would charge for doing a menu review of a facility. And it might be variable depending on the size of the facility, and it might change depending on exactly what is expected of you. But you need to come up with some kind of costing system so that if you're contacted by a residential aged care facility or anywhere else, you can get back to them with a bit of a quote on what you would charge, and it becomes part of your private practice. So you might go into private practice thinking all you're going to do is clinical, but in actual fact, you could easily end up doing food service as part of that as well. On top of that, hospital dietitians need to understand the food service system as well. As a hospital dietitian, you can't possibly assess what someone is eating unless you know what they got. So if you don't know what is happening in the food service and what food is actually going up, and are those values reliable, and is the portioning correct, and all of the intricacies around the food being delivered, there's no way you can actually calculate intake. So it's important that you understand these fundamentals. So that's another reason why we're doing a menu review, because that helps you to understand some of the little intricacies that go on. A sports dietitian, so when I was working for the PNG sports team, we had to, I wanted to review the menu for the athletes' village. Unfortunately, I wasn't given that opportunity, despite many, many requests. And the menu that they ended up provided wasn't suitable for people, with celiac disease or any vegetarian, or many, many issues with the menu, because myself as a sports dietitian wasn't able to do that menu review. So if you are looking at getting into sports, menu reviews also are really important to what you do when it comes to managing athletes' villages and so on. And a consultant dietitian, so that's sort of similar to your private practice type dietitian, where you might just get paid to come in, do the menu review and leave, basically. As a private practice dietitian, you might already be seeing patients within the residential aged care facility, and this is an add-on on top of it, like on top of the service you're already providing, whereas a consultant would come in, do the job and leave. So I hope that makes it really clear as to why doing a menu review is fundamental to your knowledge as a food service dietitian, or just as a dietitian generally moving forward. It applies across a range of different settings, and it's a really important skill to have. So the task description. So what you're required to do is an 18-page project report. Now that will include an executive summary, an introduction, aims and objectives, methodology, results, discussion, and recommendations. So more details can be found on the marking criteria, which I have uploaded for you. So you can jump into that. That's about a 50-minute video for you to have a look at. So I go through in a little bit of detail through there on under the different headings, I suppose, within your project report. Within your marking criteria, you have the number of pages per section that is allocated. So please don't go over that allocated page. I won't read it. So it won't be included as part of your mark. If you go to 3.5 pages, and the half page doesn't get read. Okay, so that's the best thing I can do in order to be fair to every single person. Next section there, so the focus of your report should be on the case study. It's more than just a case study, it's actually a place, and they will be taking the project reports and actually applying some of those recommendations. So it's more than just a case study. But what you have to do is evaluate the existing menu against appropriate standards to determine its suitability. So there's different standards that you can use. I'll give you an example of, the core food groups. You need to make sure that the menu is meeting the core food groups. So that's one standard that you would be comparing the menu to, and decide whether it's appropriate for the population group that's in the hospital. So you need to actually develop and deliver a menu. Now that needs to include recipes, because this is a practical assessment piece, and those recipes are going to go to the food service, and it needs to meet the needs of the patients at Chinchilla Hospital. So the needs include cultural needs. They also include protein and energy needs, core food group needs, etc. Therapeutic diet requirement needs. So there's lots of needs, and you need to make sure that your menu fits in with all of that. Now we cover that in lecture material, so please make sure you attend the therapeutic lecture to help you with that. So you need to also evaluate the food service system and, if required, to improve the system. So the food service system is things like how things are produced, how things are distributed and delivered, the collection of menu cards and so on. So you need to analyse that process and see if you can come up with something that maybe is more efficient, more cost effective, maybe will result in improved patient satisfaction, whatever you can do to improve that food service system. But just remember that, you know, this isn't an unlimited budget, this is an actual location, so please make your recommendations realistic. And then D, as I said before, you need to self-assess your project report against the marking criteria. So the case study is, so you're basically completing a menu and food service review of Chinchilla Hospital, which is in Queensland. So if you look at a map, Chinchilla is sort of out past, you know, Dalby sort of area. The facility will only house about 20 men and women, and they're generally from the local area, and that will vary in age. So you're going to have people from quite young all the way through to, you know, 80 years old. Only about 4% of the residents in the area, and therefore admissions at the hospital, are first Australians. So the majority of the residents are Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian, and they have lived a very typical country lifestyle. And so with that comes the country lifestyle food. So when you're creating your menu, you need to think about, is someone who's quite, you know, Australian country going to want to eat that food? So if you create maybe spaghetti bolognese, probably that's fine. If you have some kind of Greek dish, maybe not as well accepted as some of the more sort of country style foods. Okay, so I've forgotten where I'm up to. Oh yeah, the maternity unit. So this year, they're actually adding a 5-bed maternity unit to the hospital. So as I say, it is only 5 beds. So again, you need to think about what is required for a maternity unit. Now, a big hint there is that is therapeutic diet. So there is more information and resources that you will find on Learning at Griffith, which will help you to determine what is appropriate and not for a maternity diet. In staff, the staff have been working there for a very long time. So, you know, I asked her to approximate, well, I said to Louise, the dietitian out there, you know, I have the staff been working there for 10 plus sort of years. And she would say, and she sort of said at least. So, you know, they've been working there for a very long time. Their habits are quite ingrained. And so changes take time and take training. So you need to consider that when you're looking at your recommendations and implementation of those recommendations. You know, it's one thing to make a recommendation to start the new menu, but how are you actually going to implement that? So what type of training are you going to provide to the staff that are out there to help them to follow the new food service system that you're recommending and change to the new menu and so on. Other things to note, so the patients there are technically acute. They have a relatively short length of stay at the hospital compared to other hospitals around the state. Very few require texture modified diets. Because of that, they actually buy prepackaged frozen meals and they have them stored at the hospital so that when someone turns up and they require a texture modified diet, it's reheating a meal rather than creating a whole new meal for them. So that's not something that you need to think about. That process will continue, so don't think about texture modified diets. There's no allergies. The rate of allergy there is so low that it's not something that you would consider. Again, if someone turned up with an allergy, they would work it out at that point in time. The incoming residents, so very typical conditions of the population group. So there'll be a bit of type 2 diabetes, there'll be hypertension that you need to consider, and about 20% of residents have mild or moderate malnutrition. So when considering that, if it's only 20%, which is about sort of 20 to 40% is about the state average, So they're quite on the lower end of that range. So you might have something there to help, or some kind of recommendation to help people with mild or moderate malnutrition, but you might not embed that into the standard menu. For example, it might be something that they can put in addition to for the people identified with malnutrition. Okay, so a bit of further information. Relating to the assessment, you'll find, I think, about 3 videos online, including this one, about the assignment. So please make sure you read through and watch all of those. I've uploaded all the slides and PowerPoints and Word documents and stuff that I've used, so you can have a quick look through them as well as listen to the videos. The knowledge to complete the assignment satisfactorily will be covered across lectures and workshops. So the lectures are recorded, so that's not too bad if you have to miss them. But if you miss a workshop, that's very hard to make up because they can't be recorded. And I'm not going to spend 2 hours with you because you've missed it. So if you do happen to miss a workshop, your best bet would be to talk to a colleague, a friend in the class, and get the information that was covered in that class. If you have any questions, then you can put it on discussion board and I'll be happy to read through things and answer them from there. But please make sure you try and make up for any workshops that you might miss. Questions regarding the assignment as well. I really don't want people coming to me personally one-on-one and asking questions. That includes in the break at lectures, at the end of lectures, during workshops, via email, office, any of those things. And the reason for that is if you have a question, half the class probably have exactly the same question. Now, this is a real example of a project that is being done. So we don't have all of the information yet. So for example, at this moment in time, I'm still chasing up some of the recipes. I haven't received them yet. So what I'm uploading and what you're going to get so far are the recipes I've been able to get. The rest, as in reality, you just got to kind of work with it and make some assumptions. So hopefully I'll be able to get those recipes, but there's no guarantee. So if you ask me questions about those recipes and where are they and do I think I'm going to get them, well, half the class is probably thinking that as well. So instead of asking me directly, please put that up onto discussion board and I'll be very happy to put the answer there, and that will hopefully create a thread where other people can ask other questions related to the same question in the same thread. So please do that so that we can share information. The other thing about that is that 2 people might come to me and ask what they think is the same question, but because you've worded it slightly, the answer becomes different because you might have used a term that you're not quite familiar with the difference between the term you've used and the term someone else has used. You think you've used the same term. You haven't. I've given you different answers, and so therefore then you talk and then you get confused because I've given 2 different answers to what you think is the same question. So if it's all on discussion board, then it's all very, very clear as to what the instructions are and what is expected and required, as compared to people coming and asking me individual questions and then you guys talking and the whole thing getting very confusing. So please make it all very public. Very happy for you to share information and so on, but the project report obviously has to be unique. So if you're wondering how this relates to your progression as a dietitian, please scroll a little bit further down and you'll see here all the competencies that are required for you to have met before you graduate at the end of hopefully next year. Here are the ones that relate to those competencies. So the DAA have competencies that you need to meet before you graduate. This project meets those competencies or develops those competencies in terms of your skills. So please, if you are wondering why I've done something or why something's included, have a look through those and hopefully you'll understand why that is part of 3144 Food Service Management. So that brings me to the end of the task description. If you have any questions, as I said, please put them up on discussion board. Very happy to engage with you there, and good luck.